I want to be mindful of your time. We'll go straight
Sure.
into questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for accepting the invitation for the Team Leaders Summit. It's really a pleasure for us to have you here, and I can't wait for everyone to watch your session because I think it's going to be full of insight and a little bit different than what we see and what I brought to the table in this Team Leaders Summit. So, there's a lot of people that know you. I would say if there's anybody in real estate that doesn't know you, they're living under a rock. But that being said, I would love if you can give us some feedback on your journey in real estate and entrepreneurship in general.
I'll go back to my formative years. When I was young, in my teenage years, my dad had a successful business. Age 15, he kind of took his eye off the ball, lost everything, right? So it went from a place of complacency to thinking, oh, I got to pick up my socks and now, figure this out. And my biggest driver was to try and help my family as well. So, with that in mind, I pursued an education, did an undergraduate degree in the States. I played a fair bit of tennis, so I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship. Then I did an MBA, came back, worked 2 years in corporate finance, and I really was unhappy. I felt not fulfilled. And I thought, I've got to work for 40 plus years. I want to find something I'm happy with that I've got passion in. And so, I came across real estate and it was a low cost entry. I liked people, I liked homes. And I got into it. In the first years were really difficult. I didn't have contacts. I was just grinding. But I said, I love what I'm doing. It doesn't feel like work anymore. I don't have Sunday night blues, like I did in the corporate sector. So hopefully I can find a way to make this work. And eventually I started emulating a mentor of mine. Her name was Kim Egerton. She was a buyer agent. So, I became a buyer agent. I didn't even want listings back then, which is very interesting because that's obviously been a paradigm shift. But, I started finding my way and then obviously had some level of success. And from there, we started growing.
And let me ask you, what's your business structure on right now? Is it a team structure? If there's team members, and like you said, initially you started as a buyer agent, but then shifted towards the listings, how that it's working on the business?
Yeah, so I mean, the way the team concept evolved for us was initially, I was, I as a buyer agent, I think my, peak years, I was doing 140, 150 deals by myself. So I was doing maybe 12 a month, right? So I was working super, super hard. But at some point, the referrals were coming. I just couldn't keep up with the capacity. So, one of my really good friends at the time, he was doing his PhD in sociology, couldn't really get a job. I encouraged him to get his real estate license. My banker left her field, my lawyer left his law practice, and we kind of formed this group, right? But back then there wasn't really any models. You didn't really know how to build a team, what the splits would be. It was kind of trial and error, right? And I first thought it would be four of us kind of working together, but I realized from a hierarchy perspective, I was really the driver, the worker. So that, obviously that, the dynamics changed. But I think a lot of times people want to build a team because they think it's in vogue. And I always tell people build a team when it's the right time, not just because you think it's fashionable, because you should do it out of necessity and you should be able to provide leads, be able to provide mentorship, training. And if you're not ready for that, then your team's not going to work out, right? So I think everything happens organically. And for us, it was an organic growth. It wasn't, oh, I want to be a team because I see these other teams. It was more like I just can't keep up. And if I want to provide the service, I need to kind of fill those gaps.
Yeah. And if you're looking at someone that's watching you right now and says, you know what, I feel like I'm overwhelmed in terms of work, what would be your recommendation as the first hire?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I did a little too late. If I had to go back in my career, I'd have hired my first admin much earlier, right? So at one point, I was doing everything. I was qualifying people, GDS, TDS. I was sending everything to the banks, writing the ads, like everything was under my umbrella, right? And I could tell there was burnout potential. And I think, one of the things that people should do early in the game is to realize, hey, and I always tell people, listen, figure out what your hourly value is. So take your income and figure out, okay, per hour, I'm worth 50, 100, 200, 5,000, 10,000. And if the task you're doing is less than that, you should delegate it, right? So if a realtor tells me I had a really busy day, I put up four, signs, I put up some lock boxes. I'm like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be out in the field, right? So for me, once I hired an admin, I said, and I had the ability to let go because it's hard to let go because I held on for so long. I'm like, oh my God, like this is so much better for me. It frees me up to do the things I want to do in the business and outside of the business, right? So, and I think one of the things we're most proud about, I've been at this 30 plus years, 35 years plus, and we're still fresh. I still love this business. And I think a big part of that is having a really good team structure so I don't burn out. And I think that's really important. So the admin piece is so important that today I've got five personal administrators, right? I went from one to five because it frees me up. And I think that's really important so I can focus on where I need to be.
What's the size of your team right now in terms of, so you said you have five admin yourself,
Yeah.
obviously.
So we've got about 45 active agents within the team. And I'm more of a sales and marketing guy, so I've kind of focused on that. And all our service providers are full-time exclusive. So our staging team is in-house, our movers are in-house, our photography team's in-house, our marketing team. So it's allowed us to control the time efficiency and quality. But yeah, and the other piece I wasn't so good on was operational because I just didn't have the time and energy. So my brother, who was VP of operations at Tennis Canada, he retired recently. So we brought him on, and that's been a really good add-on. So he deals with all the different supporting casts on a regular basis with weekly meetings. And I think that was an important element that I was probably missing in the past.
Yeah. At what threshold you felt like you need to hire that admin? And is it for someone who doesn't have a lot of production but wants to expand, is it hiring an ISA a first step before the admin or the other way around? I know I asked three questions.
I think to me, yeah, I think to me the admin piece is really important because that's going to allow you to free yourself up, right? I mean, ISA is great if you have leads and funneling leads, but I think you want that admin person. And I think fairly early, like I think once you're in the business and you're committed to the business, and maybe year one you get your bearings, and after that, you look at maybe getting if you can't hire or can't afford a full-time in at that time, maybe a part-time. Or what I've also sometimes recommended is, in an office, maybe people share admin divided by three, right? So if they can't afford a 60, 70,000 or a 70,000 scale of salary, then maybe divide by three could be more viable, right? So until you're ready to maybe take them on full time. But I do think that's such an important piece because other times you're going to lose valuable time doing things that aren't productive.
Got it. And when you're saying that you're right now at 45 agents as part of a team, what's the team structure in terms of I interview a lot of team leaders and some of them are based on marketing, some of them are based on prospecting, some just sphere and nurturing the sphere. What's your team way of generating business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, for us, I mean, we're pretty big lead generators. So, oftentimes, the goal for us is to drive good quality leads and share them with the team. Some team members do farm. What we found interestingly is, for example, farming. Let's talk about that. I mean, you have to realize it takes time to reap the benefits of your hard work, and most people give up prematurely. But there's many successful farmers that do really well, and they kind of have a foothold in a area. And I think people are too quick to just remove themselves from that. And even with our team, I tell them, listen, if you're going to farm, we'll support you. But if you're out in 6 months, then don't start, right? Because it's going to take a year or two to build and cultivate that farm. So, I mean, our team members, I think oftentimes are reliant on us to provide lead gen and opportunities. They use our brand to be able to piggyback off that if they're going to be knocking and creating their own initiatives as well too. But they could do more on their own personal end too.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned farming just because it's one of my favorite. I always farm from the beginning. I didn't have leads, so I had no option. Now, if I were to ask you a couple of questions about farming, and you said it so right, if you are there for 6 months and you leave, that's don't bother. Um, do you combine, your agents combine when farming the marketing and the prospecting, which is picking up the phone, going and dial?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. So if you're just farming it by way of flyers, forget it. I mean, you got to make yourself visible and present, and you have to be known, and you have to knock, do community events, all of the above, so you're memorable, right? But if it's just a flyer, you're not really farming, right? So I think you got to be engaged in that community.
I'm so happy you say that.
Oh, that's
Um,
vital, vital,
yeah.
vital. Yeah.
The reason I'm saying I'm happy is because there's a lot of misconception out thrown out there on social media. I love social media. I see your presence there for sure. We're all embracing it. Tell me how social media is part of it. And I love the fact that you said the basics are still there. They still have to happen. How's that incorporated with your social media?
So, for me, social media in the last few years obviously has been an important element to send messages to a wider target audience, right? So, and it's interesting because I also think with social media, a lot of times people are just putting listings, period, right? And people get a little bit bored with that, right? So I think there has to be some lifestyle element as well too, so people know who you are. So we've got our marketing team that's pretty strong, and I think we can still improve upon what we're doing on the social media front. But I think it's an important piece. But it's also going to be professional, so you have to really be careful how you're posting, what you're posting. You can't get too political. You can't. So all those things are really important. And I even tell our team members, if a female wants to post bikini pictures, I say, let's have your own private site, like to do that with your friends. But if it's a business site, you should really be professional, right? So, and you can't erase the messages, your pictures you've put, right? So you might say, I deleted it, but somebody could have snapshotted that. And so I think you have to be really mindful of the impact of social media, short and long term as well. But it's a very powerful tool if used effectively.
Yeah. If somebody wants to be part of your team, what's the qualification for someone joining your team?
So for us, one of the things we were looking at earlier on was that, and by the way, when I first started building a team, I thought if I had a team of five, that'd be enough, right? So, but
Mhm.
how it grew was kind of crazy because it was just organically, and eventually the business starts growing, and we end up, purchasing 7 offices throughout the GTA. But it's slow and steady wins the race. So I always tell people, hey, if you look at me today, it might be hard to think of being there today, but if you think of baby steps in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you can be there, and there's the room on top for everybody. Right. So, but there's a heavy price to pay for that, right? Most people want to be there, want to enjoy all that comes with it, but aren't ready to pay that, price. It's a bit of, heavy lifting. It's a little bit of pain and suffering to be at the top. And I think that's one of the things realtors should realize. So when I was first starting, I'm going to digress a little bit. There's a guy named Craig Proctor I had a lot of respect for. I was just in the Remax organization at the time. We were now with McDaddy Real Estate, but I went to an event, a gala, and he was number one in the world. And I said, I want to be like him, right? And so it was a motivator for me, but I knew it wasn't going to be overnight. It was going to take, but I had already planted the seeds in my mind where I could see myself the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. And I said, you know what? Why can't I be? I'm as good as any. So you have to really believe in yourself. And I did believe. Listen, I think I've got the skill set. I think I've got the personality, I have the work ethic, the drive, da da da, and I'm going to apply myself. But over time it became that. But I was reinvesting back in my business. I didn't have too much money at the beginning, but whatever I could, I'd reinvest. And branding and marketing is so important because that's how you separate yourself from the pack, right? So one of the things that was really vital for me is making sure our brand stood out, right? And so as we were able to put more money in and more money in, I think our brand grew to a point where, hopefully it's synonymous with real estate.
Got it. And going back to the idea if somebody wants right now to
Yeah,
join
sorry,
your
I missed that. So we have, today, like with 45 plus team members, some inactive as well. But one of the things we looked at was, languages people speak. So we're in the West End for the most part, our business is expanding, but so our team members speak 20 plus languages. So somebody calls me, they speak a language that maybe we don't have in the team. That's an interesting piece that we'll look at. That's not mutually exclusive. They also have to check off all the other boxes. But, what we also decided a few years back is, listen, I could grow to 100 or 200. We get 2 or 3 applications every day, but I'd rather keep quality over quantity. And also, if we're lead genning, especially when the market's kind of shifted and we're not providing enough leads to the team members, they're also not happy, right? So I'm happier now with the mindset of it doesn't have to be 100 agents, right? I'm happy with 30 or 40 good agents that are really productive and we keep them busy, right?
yeah.
Because sometimes you can water down all these agents who are disgruntled because they're not getting their share of the business. And then it's a negative environment. We want positivity and all that. So.
Is there like a qualification, for example, rather than just the language, that they close at least 6 transactions, or you're taking new agents?
Yeah, I actually prefer new agents when I hire somebody because
Oh,
yeah, because interestingly in the past we brought on agents that, were really successful a couple decades ago. And I was really excited. Wow, this is great that they're part of an organization. But, they lost their energy a little bit. They didn't have that same zest
right.
and they didn't want to learn because they thought they knew it. So I'm like, that's not a winning formula in any front, right? We get a young agent who's in their, I don't care what their age, could be 20s, 30s, or 40s, but young in the business and 50s doesn't even matter, but they've got the energy and their enthusiasm and they want to learn and they're really excited for the opportunity. So if and when we do hire, and we still interview sometimes because I might have a friend who asked me to interview somebody, I'll do that out of respect. And, maybe then I realize, oh, they're pretty good. And, this might be worth to have a second meeting and stuff. When I do meet with somebody, then if I like them, then I'll have a secondary meeting with I call it quasi board of directors who are 4 or 5 of their agents. So they can ask questions back and forth to make sure they understand the lay of the land, the environment within our team structure and organization as well. But yeah, I think to me, a newer agent for sure is more appealing than somebody who's had many years of business after test filing to that. So I definitely, if somebody had 30 years of being in the industry, it's highly unlikely I'll hire them, even if they had a great.
What's one quality that you look on an interview and say, this is someone new, they don't know the business, but they have what it takes?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me is you got to have that drive. So, firstly, integrity and honesty is critical, right? So you have to sense that they're going to represent the brand well, right? So if they're, a little bit to the right, a little to the left, they're not deviating, not going straight, and they're deviating, have no interest in that because you work too hard to build your brand to a level with respect and all that. But that aside, you can see, hey, I want this. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'll work 24/7. The problem is sometimes people talk a good game, they don't deliver, right? So, so they can say all the right things, and all of a sudden they come in and you're like, well, yeah, but you said you're going to do ABC, you're not doing any of the above, right? So then but I think for me, also not having a big ego, because if they want the star shining on them, then they should be a solo agent, right? So you have to be a good team player as well, and understand that you're in a team environment and you're accepting of that because you're going to have great opportunities. You may not be the name in front of all the ABCs, but you love what's happening within,
Yeah.
right? And most of our team members that are with us now, they've been maybe 20, 25 years, 15 years. So there's longevity. The odd time there's turnover once, one or two a year. It's normal, whatever, whether we decide it's not a fit or vice versa. But it's high retention rate because I think one of the problems with teams is retention rate isn't so high, right? There's a lot of turnover. They get what they can from it. They're not happy anymore. They move on. They think the grass is greener.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, oftentimes it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you're saying because a lot of teams actually, and we talk about, do you have a recruiting section like in your business, a department of recruiting? From what I understand, you don't. It comes very natural and organic, and it's a good fit. And the retention is something that it's coming on decades right now. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. When somebody comes in your team, do you have like an onboarding process where
Sure.
they need
Sure.
to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you
Well, I
could,
think it's really important. So, I mean, and once again, if they're brand new or newer-ish, which is my preference, as we alluded to, then yeah, we definitely want to get them integrated. And what we've heard for a lot of realtors that, and new, if they've been in the business 1 year and they went to a brokerage, they weren't happy. That's still new to me, and that's fine
yeah,
because, they're just getting their feet wet and they probably don't have too much bad habits you have to unwind as well, right? So, but one of the common themes I hear is that they're not, they joined there, they didn't know what to do, they weren't really getting any mentorship training, understanding how to, so they were kind of left on their own, right? And I mean, that's a challenge, right? Because, most jobs, you get paid a salary, you go there, they kind of educate you, they train you for your job role and description. But in this case here, oftentimes, unless you join a team, there's Keller Williams, a few others to have a training modules, which is great. And I'm also a believer, by the way, you don't want to overtrain too. There's a point
yes.
where you're just in the classroom every day, and I think you have to be out in real life, right? So, but yeah, so I think to me, yeah, we want to get them onboarding with how do we deal with our buyers and how we deal with our sellers. So with the sellers, we have all the value added propositions. So we kind of really enlighten them with our listing package and presentation. I train them on that. I train them on the buyer presentation side because, with buyers, sometimes it's not easy to articulate the value proposition versus other agents. So we want
Yeah.
to make sure we clearly delineate that and they understand why they should, when they're fielding those calls, some of the scripts they should be using and phraseology that will help them hopefully convert that to an appointment. So the beginning is a lot of me making sure they're up to speed, they understand the process. Then we get them out in the field, then we're regrouping, understanding because they're gonna fumble a little bit, they're gonna have questions. And I always tell them, if you're unsure, just say you're not sure. Don't just take a stab at it. That's the worst thing you can do. Because if you're wrong, then there's credibility issues. Now you can't say unsure for 30 things. It means now you don't know what you're saying. You don't know nothing with the business, right? So, but if you're unsure, it's okay to say, hey, that's a great question. Let me find out. I'll get back to you.
And you mentioned something very important again that I love that you mentioned these things because you have such an authority in this industry and it's important for people to hear it. They learn what to say.
Yeah.
So do your agents have like specific times that they need to be in the office? Are there mandatory trainings? Are there mandatory
Yeah. Yeah.
weekly, quarterly meetings?
No, no, not quarterly, weekly. For
Weekly.
yeah. So we have every Wednesday, tomorrow we have our team meeting training, and we also do what we call team caravans. Any of our new listings or team members all collectively go visit it. So if they field calls, they know that properly, intimately well, just not looking on a tear sheet. But no, our meetings are very important because we go through, what's happened on a weekly basis, things that I've learned that I've experienced that maybe I can share with them and vice versa. And tomorrow, for example, I realized when I was training some of our couple of newer agents that came on recently, although we don't hire too many these days, we had a few yeah, on the buyer presentation. And I realized when some of the senior team members were there, they were not so clear on it. So I said we should have everybody kind of do a refresher because if you're not clear on the information, you're not going to present it, right?
Yeah.
But you want to really know it inside out. So no, it's very important for us to meet weekly, barring if I'm traveling, then obviously we'll miss that week.
Yeah. And are these trainings online or in
So
person?
in person, in
In
person.
person. So
Yeah.
everybody has to come. And do you have like collectively doing role play, previewing properties like you said you're going and but role play is one of the
Yeah,
collective activities?
yeah, so we were doing that a few weeks ago, and and shame on me for not doing it more recently because I realized, oh my God, some of the things our team members are saying aren't exactly on point, right? I said we got to really refresh on this. So no, role playing is really important, and I think for a few months, sometimes I assume my senior agents have it, right, and they understand, but then I realized, no, everybody needs a refresher, and I always tell them I'm a student of real estate, I'm a student of life, regardless of how many years I've been in the business, the level of success we have or haven't had, you always want to be learning, right? So you can't close yourself off and assume you know everything because you can attend one function, one seminar, pick up one or two good points, and that's worth it. So, and for our team, when they're attending, they're always learning one or two. So, a lot of our senior team members for tomorrow's meeting, they said, no, we want to be there too, because they realize, yeah, they need a bit of a refresh as well. So, that's really important.
And a little bit on the operation side, you said you have your operation manager right now.
My brother, yeah.
Yes, your brother, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
And what are the key roles you have in your team?
Yeah, so for me, like I was saying, I've really been focused on sales and marketing. So I kind of built the team out with their photography, their stagers, with their moving division, but wasn't really meeting on a weekly basis, understanding their wants, needs, their concern. I just there's only so many hours in a day, and that was kind of a mistake. So I think with the operations, that layer has been, filled, and so I think all their needs are being met, all their questions are being answered on a more readily basis, and so I think that's really because what we really feel about our Team McDaddy, is that it feels like a family, and everybody should feel like it's harmonious, it's synergistic, and they can come to anybody for help and advice. And I always say, listen, you're going to have, 70, 80 team members by the time you factor in admin, supporting cast. Not everybody's going to have to love everybody. There's a lot of great friendships forged, but there should be mutual respect with everybody.
Yeah. How do you create culture when you have so many personalities and so many people to kind of maneuver?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of team bonding activities. I mean, I'll take my team member on cruises. We go to Vegas. I mean, interesting, since COVID, we haven't done Vegas for a while, but we used to set quotas. Okay, if our team sells 100 houses this month, we're going to Vegas and da da da. And then we have team barbecues and Chris. So there's a lot of functions within. We play a lot of sports together. This summer we'll play a lot of baseball as a team, and bowling in the fall just as a team. So I think that builds that closeness connection. And I'm really happy to see a lot of team members have forged really deep, strong personal friendships within. And I think that's great.
That's amazing. What are some of the systems that you use right now? For example, what's the CRM that you use or the platform that you stay connected with your agents with?
So Follow Up Boss is what we're using today. And we have one of our administrative gals, Linda, who's great. She keeps me on point. And I always tell people from a lead gen perspective, a lot of realtors are looking for the red hot lead, right? But some of them, if they're calling, they have a reason. I mean, they might not be right now, it might be 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And everything we ever touch, there's always next contact point, whether it's myself or my team members. So with Linda, she keeps me accountable. Every day we go through our 40 or 50, 60 people that we got to touch base. And some after 3, 4 years, thank you for reaching out. We're now ready. So it's sometimes years in the making. But if we don't keep in touch, then it's not their responsibility to reach out to us. But if I reach out every quarter, if I feel they're not quite ready yet, or every month, and let's say they go a different direction, then I won't feel guilty. I'll say, listen, I did all I could. I was at least communicated with them. And if they would decide to go with somebody else or they didn't reach out to me, I mean, of course, I'm not happy, but I know it wasn't a misstep on our part. You don't want to feel like, I didn't reach out. That's my fault. And so I should have actually reached out. And maybe had I reached out, we had a really good rapport. That's a real disappointment, especially in a market today where it is a little slower. You have typically more time. You should be hitting everybody, like everybody. And I told my team, so we're actually, if team members aren't current with a follow-up boss, they just get removed off leads until they clean up, right? And it doesn't mean just pushing it over 2 weeks because that means touching them because sometimes they'll cheat the system, say, okay, now, yeah, I'm clean. And they just moved it over. Like, no, you're not.
No.
You gotta be current, calling them, be active. And if you're not, we're not giving you more leads, right? So.
Any other systems right now that you're using, like in terms of maybe communication with the team, with all the departments, what systems are you using?
Nothing really too fancy. I mean, we have different group chats within WhatsApp and stuff like
What's
that.
up?
So we have a strategy team, we have a marketing team, and that's our probably mode of communication.
Mhm.
So nothing too over the top.
Yeah, I love that because there's a lot of, like all fancy, fancy things and very
Yeah,
expensive when the classic, success of what you have and the team that you have, and the performance that you have. Yeah, what's up? Why not? It's simple, easy, everybody has it.
it's easy for us, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
The market has been challenging lately. And what is it one thing that you advise your team to double down on in times like this?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of the agents who've been around, let's say 10 years or less, they haven't seen difficult days. I mean, there's been a
Correct.
couple of periods where there's been a few months, but 2024 was a difficult year because rates had gone up quite a bit and affordability and people weren't really buying it
Mhm.
and all that of that. So, I would turn the corner in 24 and I told her, it wasn't our best year. I mean, it was a difficult market, but 25, I'm optimistic it'll be a good year. It'll be more of a balanced market. And then after the first week where people got over the holidays, week 2 and 3 were really good for us. It felt like the good market. And then we got stalled week 4 because, the tariff discussions February 1st, they got pushed to March and April. So the deferral part really was difficult because people can't make sound decisions with uncertainty, right? And I think that's what happened. But with our team, I tell them, listen, this is the time you got to drill down, talk to all your clients, go back to your database. And I know right now buyers are on the fence, they're nervous, but this is the best time to buy today. I mean, when there's adversity, you can have courage to go against the grain, you'll succeed, right? Right now, there's a lot of motivated sellers. You'll carve really good deals. We know the GTA is a vibrant market. It's going through a bit of a lull, but that's not a forever phenomenon. We're the financial hub of Canada. So I think they need to know this is, and if you can really believe that, which I do, then you can tell your clients and really articulate that to your buyers. Then I think that you're going to transact with these buyers who will be grateful a couple years down the road. Everybody's trying to time the market. Can I get it? Can it go down another 5 or 10 points? And listen, can it go down a few more points? Possible. I mean, but at the end of the day, they've seen buyers who couldn't secure a property 2, 3 years ago could buy a property today 20% less because they were competing in the height of the market. Take advantage of that. I mean, rates have come down. This is probably our new norm. You're going to see
Yeah.
4% money, which is reasonable. I mean, we were hovering too low for too long that people thought that was the norm. And I think this year people adjusted to the 4%, but it was just this tariff discussion, the elections and all.
Yeah.
So I think all the noise in the background was the reason the market was probably stalled. But I still think with sellers today, because it's difficult because, in the old days, historically, 8 of our 10 listings would sell. Maybe 2 of our 10 not sell because the market's different. So it's now really being good communication skills with your sellers. And if there's a price adjustment warranted, that I think you have to have that hard discussion and bring the comps and because if you're silent, then the client will be very
Yeah.
disappointed. When it's time for renewals, you still may not renew with you because sometimes you were still the scapegoat, and that's fine. But once again, I'll go back to if you did everything right and they still don't want to go with you, but you communicated this and that, just like, if I kept in touch with past clients and they still went in a different direction, I'm peaceful. But if I didn't do any of the above, then it's on me. So if I take a listing in 90 days, I don't touch base and there's no showings, that's kind of on me, right? So then you can't blame them for feeling they get left high and dry.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you keep them motivated in times like that, when we had a year like last year and a start like this? How do
Well,
you how do you
I,
get
I
them?
think that the meetings are very important, right? Because those are kind of also motivational talks, right? Just to get people motivated, encouraged, and still, in my belief, it's the best industry we can be in because you set your own hours. There's no glass ceiling. So I remind them, even if you had a bad year and you made, a number X, well, you're still better than 95% of the Canadians, right? I know previous years we were making Y, which was much better, but you're still, in control of your time and control of your income, and this is just a temporary lull. But they need to realize that there is sometimes lulls in the marketplace. There's peaks and valleys. And if you've only seen good times, well, this is a great time not just to be an order taker, learn your skill sets so you can really, when I got in the business late 80s, 89 to 95, I had about one good, 1 or 2 good months. And I thought this was an easy business. And I took a trip back then to Acapulco with my fiance at the time. It was from South Carolina. And I'm like, oh, making money is kind of easy. Like I don't know why people
Mhm.
complain. And I came back, the market crashed, right? So for 6 years, it was like not 1 or 2 years from 89 to 95, 96. But really, in hindsight, those were the best learning grounds, right? Because you learn through difficult markets. You had to be creative. You had to find innovative ways to put deals together, buy down mortgages because rates were so high. But a lot of the agents didn't have to go through adversity in the last decade, bar say for a
Yeah.
month or two. So they're just not knowing how to navigate and maneuver during difficult times, right? Which is one of the things as a team leader and mentor that hopefully I can instill that with our team members as well.
when were you on these times, what were your prospecting methods at the time when there were like these high interest rates and this difficult times? What were your prospecting?
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't have the same availability of funds as so I mean, I was limited. So a lot of people who are, right now listening that, I was just getting out of the gates and I had student debt and, da, 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 da. So I was doing little small ads. So I was trying to work with buyers because I thought that's based on the mentor we were talking about earlier. So I was putting little like loss leader ads, detached houses, 99,000, and then call and I used my skill set to convert them to an appointment, win them over, and then from there, hopefully build client relations. But and the same discussion took place. If we have a seller say, listen, the rate's 12%, rather than drop the price, let's buy down the rate to 6%, right? So your mortgage, so back then, if you had a really low assumable mortgage, which people don't even realize because we had such low rates for so long,
Mhm.
that was a great selling feature on the listing. If you said, hey, by the way, we have a rate that's assumable 6%, and their mortgage was 12%. I mean, they're like, oh, this property is
Yeah.
really attractive because my payments will be much less, right? And I had great relationships with banks. The banker that left her industry, she was with Scotia Bank, Cynthia, and she would, we'd get a lot of really good better rates than anybody else could get. So we were able to promote these rates. So we try to be creative. What could we do? So if rates were 10, I could get 7, right? So like, let's call Sam. My brother's a realtor, but if you can give me 7, I'm using you, right? So we had to kind of tap into different potential opportunities to kind of reinvent ourselves.
That's amazing. What are you listening right now? What are you reading? What do you recommend for leaders, team leaders?
There's a few realtors I've like I said, Craig Proctor. I listened to a lot of his podcasts. Still today, he's kind of gone into that space there. Honestly, the last year or two, I mean, I haven't done as much on that side of it. I've kind of gone into the biohacking space in terms of really health, and I'm listening to a lot of that, which I think is really important too. So I teach with my team as well. Health is wealth, right? So you can have all the tea in China. So if you're not taking care of yourself and eating well and doing all the right things, then it's not worth anything. So I mean, I think, when I was younger, I had a lot of really good books I read in my university years, so like How to Win Friends, Influence People really shaped me a lot. Think and Grow Rich. Those were big books for me as well. And I still do a lot of reading, but or maybe now watch podcasts, we want to see more than reading, so that where I want to find out more about the subject matter. Real estate, I mean, I'm always learning, of course, but I've got a lot of interest now so if you got limited time, where do you put the time and energy? So,
Makes sense. I want to be mindful of your time, but one more question before I let you go.
sure.
It's a question that I ask everyone, and believe it or not, over time gave us so much insight. I know you've been to events, you speak, you're well known. People are having you on podcasts and webinars. What is one question that you were asked that really stood with you, and it was a smart question, and it worth it the answer for us to hear it? And take your time.
That's a good question. So I have to think about this one a little bit. Yeah, so I think it's real estate related, yes and no, but I think one of the questions was just about let's say for example wealth creation. Let's talk about that, right? So people would ask me about that, and I tell people often that to be successful, it's a long road, it's a long path, right? So a lot of people want instant gratification today, and so if they make money, it comes in and goes out, right? And seeing what my dad went through, I was really clear that I didn't want to go through difficulties. And if I was ever in a good place, that I was going to stay there and I was going to have debt and all that. So one of my really good friends who I did an MBA with, I remember, and I share this story often, is I was driving down as my couple young years in real estate. I was turning a corner, starting to have some level of success, making a reasonable income. And we are going back to watch a football game at Earl University, South Carolina. He goes, Sammy, how are you doing these days? And I said, Davey, I'm doing good. I'm finding my way. And just let me ask you one question. I said, sure. He was a fee-based financial planner. Some of his clients were Arthur Blank, owner of Home Depot, Atlanta Falcons. So, pretty high net worth guys. And he said, if you couldn't work for 6 months, how would you be? So I sat back. I said, not so good. I said,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't be, because what you have to think about now is, building residual income. Think, so, what do we tell all our clients, be it doctors, this, that, what do you need to live on a monthly basis? And once you get to that residually, then you can effectively retire and just enjoy what you're doing, right? So that's like the light bulb went on. I said, wait a sec, this is Yeah, that and it just changed everything how I viewed. So I went back home. I didn't have too much money. I had like 25, 30,000. I gave a mortgage out, right? And then I said, okay, I got a couple of, and I set a goal of how much I want to make on a monthly basis, right? So residually, right? So and and I hit that probably in a year or two. So it was really quick. I said, wow, this is great. But then my lifestyle changed. So that number had moved up, right? But the lesson for me was that a lot of people are it's delayed gratification, right? So they want to have everything today. They want to love fancy cars. They have they don't. And I live like people saying, you're living so modest, so meagerly. I said, but listen, I have a plan. Once I get to a good place, then I can open up the funnel and then I won't feel bad about it because I can do it out of residual income and a whole bit. So I think people in real estate today, obviously, you want to use real estate as a platform to, you first have to enjoy this business. So if you enjoy the business, you'll have longevity. You have to realize Rome wasn't built in a day. Our business was built over many decades, right? Each year we added, we grew to the point where we became big. But if you just look at 1 year at a time, we weren't that big, but we just kept going because we knew where we wanted to be, right? So and I think that was really important. But be very mindful of your dollars because even this is a great reminder today that you see as the market has shifted, a lot of clients took on too much debt. They're over leveraged. You can see people, maybe a third of the pre-construction can't close their properties because they thought they're going to. You always have to think, what's the worst case scenario? Not best case. Best case is gravy. Worst case, what's
Yeah.
worst case? If the worst case is, if I tell people, listen, you have to buy this, close it, maybe carry it for a year without a tenant, can you do it? If the answer is no, don't do it because life's too, stress will do a lot of bad things for you, including maybe bad for relationships, for your health, all the above. So live within your means and don't worry about the job. And one last thing I'll just share with the 2 seconds is that a lot of times people are so concerned about what other people think about them, like that what drives them. So social media is really bad for that because you can see these trollers, and sometimes I see negative things about me, and it impacts me by like they don't even know me, so why am I going to worry about what they say? Because there's a lot of people who are kind of not happy in their own skin and they want to be just negative, right? But I remember very vividly, Hazel McCallion, who I was very good friends with, she was the mayor of Mississauga. She lived to be just shy of 102. And I went to her funeral with my friend, the superfan Nav Badia, and it was a state funeral, if you want to call it that, and all the dignitaries were there. I was expecting standing room only, like probably the biggest iconic figure in our city. It was like half empty. So I started thinking, I said, here's the most iconic figure. When she's gone, it doesn't matter. So why are we living our life worried about others? The people who you should really care about, the people you love, and your family. The rest, walk the straight and narrow. How they're going to view you should be influenced by that because it won't matter anyway. Because at the end, it doesn't really matter. So.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing advice. I want to ask you, how old were you when your mentor friend said to you, what's your residual income? What's your passive income? How old were you?
Yeah, I was probably in my late 20s.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Yeah, I got it
When
young. I got it young. I got it young. So,
yes, yeah,
and maybe I'm a little different because of my all my and some people leverage. I just everything I have, I just paid for. I just didn't want to have debt because I just want to sleep at nights. And the argument could have been, hey, you could have leveraged and double down. I said, I'm peaceful. I'm happy. Right.
yeah,
So,
that's
but that
important.
lesson was very early. So for about 5 to 10 years, I really rather than change my car, change my engine. Right. So I was
Yeah.
so committed to this goal of getting to a good place. And that was a big driver for me as well.
I think it's credit to you as well that you heard it because some people can hear it at a young age and they don't actually compute of what that means. And I'm happy you mention it because it's so important. And I was lucky to open my mind at the beginning of my 40s. Unfortunately, I wish it was earlier. But since that moment, when it clicks in your mind, you can't make the same decisions. You can't have the same mindset. Everything changes, and it's so important. I'm so happy you mention it. Um, Grateful for you being here, and thank you so much for taking the time. And I met you a couple of times in person, but I can't wait to meet you again. And yeah, thank you again for everything and all
It's
your
been my
wisdom.
pleasure, and you asked some great questions. Look forward to seeing you soon as well.
Thank you.